All right, so spoke a lot about doing activities while you're fasted, and I'm currently 4 days into a fast right now and still kicking. Okay, so here's the thing. You can still function very optimally while you're fasting. People don't know this. Of course, you don't want to jump right into it. I'm kicking a soccer ball right now, by the way. But basically, you can function very well. And 4 days in, the most important thing is adequate electrolyte content. Because if you do not get that, your body is going to leach out its own internal stores of electrolytes. And you do not want that. That is a problem. And fortunately, your body will make you feel like shit before that happens. So you probably won't be able to get that far anyways. But, I mean, still kicking a soccer ball, okay? Fasting this whole time, 4 days, feeling great. I've been out here for an hour already. And your energy is going to fluctuate on a fast like this. It's absolutely going to fluctuate. So you can't expect to do your first fast and just be like, wow, I feel great, you know? Speech is smooth, still playing sports and all that, working out. You can still do all those things. However, right now what I'm prioritizing is getting some sun. Okay, the weather's finally good where I live. And at the same time, I'm not really doing the most glycolytic activity I can. Granted, I've done this plenty of times on fast. I worked out the other day, but on like the second day of my fast. But the main thing here is you want to make sure, sorry, I'm breathing heavy. I've just been running around for the whole time. Essentially, I am doing a lot of burst style training here. At the same time, it's more so moderate intensity. That is a type of cardio that actually churns up body fat like mad. Because your body is not going to use its body fat if you're doing something highly intense. That's the point of stored carbs. So if you're going to integrate this, you know, this is more so of a footage for proof, okay? It's not necessarily like I'm going to give the whole spiel here. But the point is, you can do this. You can train, you can lean down, you can fix inflammation, you can essentially clean out dead cells and toxins from your body, and it's great. I mean, you may break out a little bit or something. That's what happens with fasting via the detox effects, but it's great. And I guess I'll explain more of it in this video. So, if you haven't already gathered, this video is on tips for prolonged fasting that you probably haven't heard before, especially when it comes to muscle loss and especially when it comes to activity. So I'm going to use this as a video to explain some of the other concepts revolving carb metabolism and basically other fat loss tips. But the main thing I want to hammer home with here is you can absolutely perform well during a fast. However, first point, you need adequate electrolyte consumption. So that fast was from last week, and this week I'm actually doing another fast, about a day and a half into another multi-day fast, depending on how I feel. That one was a 5-day fast, and you know, even then I was working out. That was another casual workout, just kicking a ball around, just trying to get some movement in, because fasting is like a muscle. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, and the easier it will be, and the more your body's going to sort of reach equilibrium. Okay, so here's the thing. When you are fasting, you need the electrolytes, sodium, potassium, and optimally some magnesium. If you can get more, that's good, but you need higher doses than the ones that are typically in, you know, 0-calorie Gatorades or whatever the hell else is in there. And also, while you're fasting, you don't want to be taking in too much sweetness. So another huge tip here is I have tried numerous long fasts, and you will always notice better appetite suppression if you keep sweetness out of there. Even if it is stevia, all the supplements I use are stevia based. A couple have a little bit of sucralose or Splenda, but I really only use those sparingly, and I always try to, you know, inform you of which supplements are the best. And you'll never hear me really promote a product if it's not perfect in my eyes in terms of ingredient composition. Otherwise, I'll tell you. So let's get into some muscle loss facts here. Here's one key concept I really want to hammer home for this video, okay? And this is going to be making the video worth it, even if you just listen to this tip, even though there's other ones. So when somebody is in a calorie deficit or not even fasting, right, and they're on a carb metabolism, you must be very careful in such a scenario. So I never tell people that you have to do keto or fasting. I recommend using them sparingly and finding out which amount you like to use them most with. So try to find your own balance with those techniques, because that's exactly what they are. They're tools for you, okay? Cutting out sugar is not going to harm you, okay? People are more afraid of cutting out sugar than they are of sitting on the couch all day. Cutting out sugar for periods of time and cutting out food altogether for periods of time is a very healthy practice, and especially for people in the bodybuilding and fitness sphere. It's something that people should be getting into far more. So when we're looking at muscle loss, when you are on a carb metabolism and you underfeed your body carbs, it is going to want to continue that usage of carbs. What a crazy fact that is, right? But it's obvious and it's logical. So when you are on a fat metabolism, aka keto or fasting, your body is not going to be as likely to convert its muscle into energy. Why is that? Well, people will be familiar with the concept of gluconeogenesis on keto, right? That's basically your body making new glucose from protein, from glycerol, the backbone of fat. And your body can absolutely do that. However, your body does this every single day, okay? So the only thing that primarily affects gluconeogenesis is demand. It's not a supply-driven process. It's a process that's driven by how necessary it is for you to make new glucose. So if you're on a carb metabolism and you're underfeeding carbs, you are more likely to break your own muscle down, because protein converts into carbs very easily. Well, not very easily. It puts a little bit of a metabolic demand in your body, but it converts a hell of a lot easier than it does from fat, okay? From glycerol. And when you're on a carb metabolism, your body is much more likely to only be able to stabilize blood sugar by breaking down protein. So it could raise your cortisol, it could raise other stress hormones like norepinephrine, basically to convert more protein into glucose and stabilize that sugar. When you're on a keto metabolism, you are not going to experience this. When you are on a fasting or keto metabolism and your body is adapted, right, what's going to happen is your body is simply going to parse out its glucose much more efficiently. And it's not going to need to break down protein unless you are like shredded. Unless you are shredded or you're in a very, serious, tense, stressful situation, it's very unlikely that your body is going to break down protein and turn it into carbs, because your body is not even running on carbs at that point. Its primary fuel is ketones for the brain and fatty acids for the body. So a little bit of glucose will still be made, and it will primarily be brought to the brain, but it doesn't take that much. Your body can make its own carbs. It's simply that when it's in a state where it is expecting carbs all the time, that is where you're far more likely to trigger breakdown of proteins for usage as fuel. So again, when you are on the fasting or keto metabolism, your body is far less likely to do this because it doesn't need to. It has far greater blood sugar control, and it realizes that it's working with a lower quantity of blood sugar every day, or a lower quantity of glucose coming in, rather. So essentially, that's one key factor you need to know. Your body isn't going to be inclined to break down its muscle, and you could look at me as an example. Even while I'm out there playing, I haven't lost a little bit of muscle. I posted other videos where I explain my muscle with, scales that I use, high-tech scales. Well, not high-tech, but like higher tech for stuff that we have today. And even though it's not 100% accurate, you can see that my muscle mass is generally around the same, and I actually even did some keto bulking and increased it a little bit. You can watch my other videos on that. I also have other videos on essentially how people who are on a carb metabolism are far more likely to experience that protein breakdown, as I just explained. So I have other videos on that. You could look into it on my page. This is not a video that's intensively packed with, scientific studies, because I have other videos to explain that. Now, or at least to prove that. Now, as far as the proof, it's in the pudding, okay? You see me on those videos. I don't look like I've lost a single bit of muscle. I try to keep lean year round, and there are periods where I cut down a little bit more. Last fast was a little bit more fat burning oriented, but I also tried to clear up some inflammation in my shoulder. So there's a lot of other benefits you can get from fasting. But if your goal is pure fat loss, here's another tip. You don't want to have the sweetness again or any other small bits of calories, because essentially that may create a blood sugar rise in some people, depending on how, athletic you are or other factors like that. So when we're looking at the best usage of fasting as a fat loss tool, again, you are going to need the electrolytes, and unless you intend on doing a dry fast, which I don't talk about too much because I've only done several small dry fasts, it's basically just as effective to get a drinking water fast, okay, with electrolytes. Now, here's why you need the electrolytes, okay? In case nobody's explained this to you, think about when you put your hand in a bathtub. It prunes up. when you take in more water, it flushes out other water. Essentially, your body's always trying to keep balance. And this is why when you're fasting, you need the electrolytes, especially if you're performing. Now, granted, with keto, the keto diet, you do not really need any supplements because it's a diet. Your body will balance out. But the first weeks, some people do use electrolytes. When you are fasting, this is imperative that you get electrolytes because our ancestors were dry fasting or taking in little bits of water here and there, and their bodies and their anti-diuretic hormone, their aldosterone, everything was far more regulated to expect these behaviors, expect dry fasts here and there, to expect, a reasonable amount of scavenging. Okay, this is what our bodies are designed for. Our bodies are designed to live on scarcity because if they weren't, then we wouldn't be here. Okay, you can look into the basics of evolution. That is essentially one of the key points there. If you think about it, our body would have to be able to survive through the most scarce scenarios. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. Okay, you wouldn't be watching this video. So, last few tips I'll say about carb metabolism and, fasting and fat burning. You can still burn fat with a good diet, okay? Especially one that's calorie controlled, okay? Because there's two sides of the coin. The quality of your diet and how likely it is to cause insulin spikes, aka keto. And also the quantity side, the calorie side of the equation. Because the total energy, not just the likelihood of the food you're eating to cause fat storage. So, that's generally the way I like to explain things. But when we're looking at, somebody, do you need to fast, right? That's another question here. If we're talking about do you need to fast, what I always say is practice some fasts, practice some 2-day fasts. And if you're doing a fat loss cut, essentially you have that in your back pocket as a tool for, I have people who I work with who are on short time spans. They have trips, they have weddings, they have maybe some people with, trying to get the beach body type thing in time. With those scenarios, it's always good to have the ability to fast in your back pocket because you can always whip that out whenever you essentially are behind on a fat loss goal. It's a dramatic tool because what you're doing is you're entering a deeper state of ketosis. I have people who ask me, basically, how much can I consume a lot of MCT oil or a lot of fat during a fast, like the fat fasting videos. You have to understand, if your goal is autophagy, the more calories you consume, even if they're fat, it's going to downregulate autophagy. Well, it's not necessarily going to downregulate it, but it's not going to give your body more incentive because part of the mechanism of autophagy is certain hunger hormones need to be lowered, like leptin, for example. And your body needs to see that there's less calories coming in to create that demand. Okay, in other videos I've explained that leptin is like the manager. It's like a store manager of your body's resources. And it's basically trying to tell you at all times, should you be hungry? Because we have a lot of food on hand, so I think we're pretty good. We can ride this out. But if you keep bringing in storage, if you keep bringing in stock as you're trying to clear out, you're going to experience some downregulation of fat burning there, or at least fat mobilization. So the thing is, when you are fasted, you enter a very deep state of ketosis, and that is an endogenous state of ketosis. So I have people who I work with who really need to keep high ketones at all times for various reasons, and one way to do this would be to fast. However, for a lot of people, they can simply get by for lifestyle purposes by just eating a lot of fat. Okay, and that can keep the blood sugar stable. That works for a lot of type 2 diabetics. That works for a lot of people with brain injuries or things of that nature. And essentially, of course, fasting for a long time can work for them, but it's a matter of practicality. And when we're talking about practically implementing, yeah, somebody was talking to me there. Essentially, you can keep a high-fat diet to maintain glucose and to maintain high ketones for brain function and other purposes. But the main thing here is that fasting is the deepest state of ketosis, and it may be hard for some people to make that leap, and that's where keto comes in because it can help you facilitate the ability to fast. So again, I guess this kind of explained a lot of contextual details of fasting here for you, and hopefully you have a better idea of certain factors on fasting. So muscle loss, carb metabolism. I guess I'll touch a little bit on glycolytic activity. Again, similar concept to the gluconeogenesis I just explained, where if your body is, let's say you're a high performing athlete and you didn't eat any carbs, even though you normally do, and then you go into a workout, what's going to happen is your body's going to be more inclined to basically recognize that demand for carbs because you're running on them and you don't have any, and then it will be more likely to break down carbs in the liver, and once it gets through that, then maybe some in the muscles. But again, it all is very individual on that basis. But the main point is here, you don't have to worry about breaking down your muscle during a fast. except maybe if you're brand new. If you're brand new, then that's a different scenario where you kind of want to take it easy for your first few fasts, or at least start off with a keto diet to sort of get your body realizing, hey, we're running on fat now. We're not going to be requiring the need to jack up glucose all the time, okay? Unless it's your first fast and you just jump into high intensity exercise, you're probably not going to have that problem, okay? So hopefully that explained all the details of muscle loss and when it can occur on fasting, and also why it mostly won't occur. Okay, so that's it for this video, and hopefully I've given you some examples from my own fasting, and leave me some other questions. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can, and go to my website, fill out an application if you want to consider working together, and also check out my programs, free guides, and things of that nature. Anthony Romano, peace.